The value that you get in the budget earbud market today keeps improving year after year. So today I'll be scoring and ranking 11 of the best earbuds under $100 in a total of 10 categories. I've also created a spreadsheet so you can customize all this scoring to the favorite categories that matter more to you. Now it's been almost a year and a half since I posted my last top 10 under $100 video. So basically all the earbuds in today's ranking are new, but some oldies do make a return. Now, most of the picks today are well under $100. Many are well under $50 on sale. So let's get straight into it. Category 1 is comfort. Now, this is a tricky one to score. All buds fit us differently. For me personally, I can use any of these buds on my ranking and wear them all day. But with the buds that have a score of 9 or 8.5, they do have a slightly shallower driver shaft. And with that, you get a lighter feel in the ear canal. So the buds that have a score of 8 do have a slightly deeper fit. It's really not a huge difference in terms of feel in the ear canal though. Now, if you're looking for which bud includes the most ear tips in the box, the Earfun Air Pro 4 and Soundcore Sport X20 include 5 sizes. The benefit here is that you'll have a higher chance of finding the right size, especially if you have smaller ears or really large ears. The Soundcore Liberty 4 NC do include 4 sizes, the rest of the bud, the usual small, medium, and large. But the Skullcandy Method 360 do include 3 sizes of wingtips. The Galaxy Buds FE do include 1 wingtip as well. And this can really help with the security of the fit, which is category 2, security. So that's why both of those buds are scored higher with a score of 9. The Soundcore Sport X20 get a 10 as it does have a hook built into the earbud. So that bud is going to be the most suitable choice for some really intense training. Basically, there's no way it's going to fall off your ear. But I might just have lucky ear canals. I can personally wear any of the buds on this ranking throughout a weight training workout or a run, and I'm barely needing to readjust the earbuds. But if you have a wingtip or a hook, you'll probably notice you won't have to adjust the earbuds as often. Again, all our ears are different. You're never gonna know how well the buds stay in your ears until you actually try them yourself. Now, bonus round here is the IP rating, so dust and water resistance. The Soundcore Sport X20 has the best protection with an IP68 dustproof and waterproof rating, which makes sense, it is a sports focused earbud. Still, the buds with the IP55 rating are dust and water resistant. Buds that have an X in there don't have any dust resistance. Still, IPX4 is gonna be fine for any sweaty workout, use in light rain. It's only the Galaxy Buds FE with the IPX2 rating that you should really avoid getting wet. They should survive a bit of rain in a workout, but just be more cautious with those buds. All right, category 3 is case and battery life. And in terms of case size, the most important factor is going to be how thick or thin the case is. So here's my thin ranking, the thinnest case at the top, which is the Nothing Ear A. But even the Soundcore Liberty 4 NC ranked second last is still pretty pocketable. The Skullcandy 360 case though is quite large and chunky as well, as you can see here compared to the Nothing Ear A and Liberty 4 NC. Now for the scoring, I favor a higher earbud battery as that will be what most people will prioritize. So in that case, the Skullcandy 360 has the highest with 9 hours of battery, and that's with noise cancelling on. I only scored them down slightly since the case is huge. So it's really just the Soundpeats Air 5 Pro with a pretty measly 4.5 hours on the buds. The Nothing EA with 5.5 is also not great, but that case has an IP55 dust and water resistant rating. So do the CMF Buds Pro 2, and the newer CMF Pro 2 Plus only have an IPX2 rating. So a lot to take in there, but the best to me is the Earfun Air Pro 4. You get a thin case, solid battery with 7.5 hours on the buds, and you get wireless charging as well. All right, now category 4 is controls. Again, there's a lot to consider here, so I'll run through one bud at a time. Starting with the Galaxy Buds FE, they get a score of 7, as you can only customize the long hold. So if you want to add in volume or voice assistant, you have to lose your ambient control. The wearing detection will only work as well when you take both buds out. You do get always on Bixby voice assistant, but that's only going to be on a Samsung device. The Soundcore Sport X20 get a 7.5. They're the only bud on this ranking without wearing detection. And you do miss out on a triple tap, but they're the only bud with a physical button. You can customize each function with complete freedom, and you can save separate controls, say if you're using one earbud with the other in the case. Only Soundcore buds have this kind of hidden feature. The Soundpeats Air 5 Pro get an 8. You get touch controls, also no wearing detection, but you can customize each function with complete freedom. You can also add in the game mode to the controls. You aren't able to change the ambient control switching, so you're going to be stuck to cycling through noise cancelling on and off and transparency mode when using the controls, rather than just switching only between noise cancelling and transparency, which would be the 2 most common settings that you change. The Skullcandy 360 also have this issue with ambient switching, but I'm scoring them an 8.5 as you do get wearing detection, and it's actually the most responsive out of all the buds on this ranking. The customization is also solid, so no complaints here. The Soundcore Liberty 4 NC get an 8.5. Touch controls, you get full customization with separate single bud controls like the Sport X20. The wearing detection here works well as long as you hold the bud by the stem. This actually goes for most of the buds I'm about to mention, as the wearing detection uses skin detection, so if you have your finger on the top of the bud, it doesn't work all the time. So the CMF Buds 2 Plus also get an 8.5, you get touch controls with everything you need. There's no single tap, but you do get a tap and hold, which works well for volume control. The Earfun Air Pro 4 also get an 8.5. Touch controls work great, you get full customization, you can add in extras like a game mode toggle. The wear and detection also works well, just be sure to grab the bud by the stem. Now the Nothing EA get an 8.5, they're actually the only bud with squeeze controls, which I personally prefer. You get all the functions you need, and you can grab the bud anywhere and the wear and detection will work just fine. The OnePlus Buds 3 and Buds 4 get an extra half point as they are the only buds that have swipe gesture for volume up and down. You can also use that swipe gesture for track control. Still, grab the buds by the stem for the wear and detection to work properly. I'm also scoring the CMF Buds Pro 2 a 9. You get the exact same controls as the CMF Buds 2 Plus, but you do get a dial on the case which allows you to control volume, track control, game mode. You get tons of options there, and if you don't want to use it, you can just turn it off in the app. Now, a bonus round here is the control that you get whilst on a phone call. Sadly, none of the earbuds allow you to mute your microphone whilst you're on a phone call using the controls on the earbud. And if you want to switch between noise cancelling on, off, and transparency whilst you're on a phone call, you can do this on the touch controls on the OnePlus Buds, CMF Buds, Nothing EA, and Galaxy Buds FE. With the Skullcandy 360, Earfun Air Pro 4, and Soundcore Buds, you need to go into the app to change these settings. And on the Soundpeats Air 5 Pro, when you answer a call, it's automatically going to turn noise cancelling off, and you can't change it after that. All right, now category 5 is connectivity. Again, I'm just going to throw out all the scoring and specs here. So from left to right, you have your Bluetooth version, the codecs, multi-point connection. Keep in mind with multi-point, none of the buds use takeover. This just means that you'll need to pause first, then press play on the other device for the audio to switch over. Next is mono, which stands for mono mode. So when using one earbud with the other in the case, are you able to hear both the left and right audio channel out of that one earbud? Surprisingly, a lot of buds don't have this, so be sure to check for that. Next is LL, which stands for low latency game mode. And also note down if there's Google Fast Pair and Microsoft Swift Pair. So Soundpeats and Earfun get a 10 out of 10 here, as you basically get every codec that exists: LDAC, aptX Adaptive, and aptX Lossless. Earfun do have that slight edge with Google and Microsoft fast pairing. I've also tested the latency on both of those buds and it's seriously low. The Earfun Air Pro 4 are actually my dedicated Switch 2 earbud, but the Soundpeats Air 5 Pro actually has slightly lower latency, so they'll be a great pick for gaming as well. Now keep this in mind, Soundcore, OnePlus, Nothing, and the CMF buds all don't work in mono mode. I know that can be a deal breaker for some, it's a bit of a niche one, so I don't score the buds down for it. And it's only the Skullcandy 360 and Soundcore Sport X20 that don't have any high-res codecs. The Galaxy Buds FE have the SSC codec on Samsung, which is sort of high-res, and I do have an asterisk on multi-point there, as you can only use it with Samsung devices. So I have scored them down slightly for that. All right, now category 6 is call quality, and I run through 3 tests here for all the buds: a quiet room, simulation crowd noise, and a simulation windy city with construction noise. The total score is the average of all 3 tests. Now here's all the scoring. Thankfully, most budget earbuds today have very impressive call quality, almost on par with the premium buds I test. I do think OnePlus, Nothing, and CMF have the best call quality overall, but I'm going to leave you with some samples here now for the crowd noise and windy city test. Going from worst to best, keep in mind it's all pretty close, so it's going to be pretty rough in terms of the ranking here. All right, now we're going to see how the microphones block out some simulation crowd noise.
All right, here's the Earfun Air Pro 4 with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here's a sample Liberty 4 NC with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here's a Skullcandy 360 with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here is the Soundcore Sport X20 with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here's the Soundpeats Air 5 Pro with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here is a CMF Buds 2 Plus with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here's a CMF Buds Pro 2 with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here is a Nothing EA with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here is a Galaxy Buds FE with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here is a OnePlus Buds 3 with some simulation crowd noise. All right, here is a OnePlus Buds 4 with some simulation crowd noise.
All right, now I have some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind.
All right, here is a Soundcore Liberty 4 NC with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. All right, here's the Earfun Air Pro 4 with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. All right, here's the Skullcandy 360 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. All right, here's the Soundcore Sport X20 with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind. All right, here is the Soundpeaks Air5 Pro with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind. All right, here is the CMF Buds 2 Plus with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. All right, here is the CMF Buds Pro 2 with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind. All right, here is a Nothing EA with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. All right, here is the OnePlus Buds 3 with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. All right, here is the OnePlus Buds 4 with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. All right, here is the Galaxy Buds FE with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind.
All right, now category 7 is app customization and extra features. This is also a bit of a tricky one to score. It's quite rough, but I'll cover each bud here, just going over the main features in each of their dedicated apps. Starting with Skullcandy, they get a 7.5. The control customization is decent. You get a 5-band EQ and small extras like taking a photo using the controls on the buds and Spotify tap. Soundpeats also get a 7.5. You get great control customization, a really solid 10-band EQ. There's a hearing test, which isn't great. You do get Find My Buds with location. I would have scored them higher, but the app is a bit buggy and slow. Plus, you need to log in to use the app, which I think is just unnecessary. The Galaxy Buds FE get a 7.5. You only get EQ presets, no band customization here. The control customization is also limited, but you do get Find My Buds with location, always on Bixby on Samsung devices. You can have notifications read out loud on any Android device, and it's nice to see some audio accessibility with left and right audio balance, and some customization of the transparency mode. I'm scoring the Nothing EA an 8 out of 10, as I use the Nothing X app, which is just the best in terms of user interface and reliability. But you only get a 3-band EQ here. The control customization is decent. You get some noise cancelling strength options, a wearing detection toggle, and Find My Buds that'll emit a beep from the buds. The CMF Buds Pro 2 get an 8.5. They use the same app as the EA, but you get extras like spatial audio and Dirac Optio for some sound quality enhancement. The Earphone app gets an 8.5 as they nailed the basics. Great 10-band EQ, Find My Buds with a beep, low latency and wind noise reduction toggles. You also get a hearing test, but it doesn't work well in my testing. The CMF Buds 2 Plus get a 9. They also use the Nothing X app, so same as the CMF Buds Pro 2, but you do get a hearing test for personalized sound that works kind of well. Now I'm scoring both of the OnePlus Buds a 9 out of 10. They use the Hey Melody app with a 6-band EQ, solid hearing test for personalized sound, and some of the best spatial audio in any price range. The Soundcore Sport X20 get a 9, as the Soundcore app is almost on par in quality to the Nothing X app, I'd say. It's a great user interface, you get a Hear ID sound test, solid 8-band EQ, 3D surround sound, everything you need. But the Liberty 4 NC get a 9.5. You get the same features as the Soundcore Sport X20, but they also have loud volume listening as a small extra to ensure you're not listening too loud. A very useful feature to have, be sure to protect your hearing long-term, people. All right, now category 8 is noise cancelling. And I test my noise cancelling here by chucking on my soundbar, and I play simulation plane noise and crowd noise. So I get low, middle, high, consistent, and inconsistent sounds. Now here are all the scores for the crowd noise test, the plane noise test, and the total is the average rounded up to the nearest half. So the OnePlus Buds 4 do take the win here, but in my testing, even the buds with a score of 8 are pretty solid. I'd say it's roughly a 5% difference in strength with each point. Even the Skullcandy 360 aren't that bad, but a lot of the cheaper buds do have stronger noise cancelling. But I also need to mention things like wind noise reduction, EQ shift, and if you can use noise cancelling while using one earbud at a time. I don't add this to the scoring because it's kind of too confusing, but starting with wind noise reduction here, this is going to work if, say, you're outside on a windy day and you have noise cancelling on. A lot of the time the mics pick up that wind, so it's nice to have a setting where the buds can automatically block out this wind. So some of the buds have this built into the noise cancelling and it will automatically happen. Other buds, like from Soundcore, require you to turn it on, and other buds just don't have it. So be sure to pause there for a closer look. But next is EQ shift. So this is how the sound quality changes when you switch from noise cancelling to transparency, then to noise cancelling off. I have it represented as like a rough percentage here. It's nice that most buds switching between noise cancelling on and transparency, you kind of retain the same sound, which is what you want. Usually you'll see more of a shift with noise cancelling off, but the shift on most buds isn't too noticeable. And finally, there's single bud use. So can you use noise cancelling or the transparency when using one earbud with the other in the case? And it's nice that you can do this on all the buds. On some of them though, you do need to change the setting in the app for it to work. Now, if you appreciate all this extra info, be sure to like the video because it takes a lot of time to test all this out. I appreciate it. All right, now category 9 is the transparency mode. With the scoring, I'm taking into account how clear or natural the transparency mode is. the amount of white noise hiss, and occlusion as well. Occlusion is kind of that blocked ear effect and your own voice not sounding too natural with the transparency mode on. So here is all the scoring with the occlusion and white noise score. The lower that score is, the better, since that means there's going to be less of it. So the OnePlus Buds 4 are the clearest overall with a very minimal amount of occlusion. They're also the only bud with an adaptive transparency mode. So this is kind of a blend of transparency and noise cancelling. So if you have the transparency mode on and some moderate or loud sound is picked up from like a kettle or a blender or something like that, it'll automatically shift into noise cancelling, like a smooth transition. And when no more noise is detected, it'll transition back into the transparency mode. Now, it's not the smoothest or most responsive. It's not going to be on the level of like premium buds from like Apple or Samsung that use the same feature, but the fact you get it at this price at all is pretty impressive. And similar to the noise cancelling, the buds that have a score of 7.5 still have a pretty decent transparency mode, still quite usable, but the occlusion or white noise might be slightly higher. And the wind noise reduction that you got with all the earbuds with noise cancelling on does carry over to the transparency mode. All right, now onto the final round here, sound quality. Before we go into the actual sound though, we're gonna start here with my max volume test. If you just need to know what the loudest earbud is, do keep in mind, even those buds that are around 114 and even 112 decibels, that's plenty of volume to play with. You really don't want to be going close to max volume on any of these earbuds. Next is spatial audio. So these are all the earbuds that use spatial audio. Keep in mind, none of them use head tracking, which I think is fine. I think it's a pretty useless feature. Now this scoring doesn't count to the overall total score since all the buds don't use it. But basically the Liberty 4NC, not really usable. The buds sound pretty tinny and terrible with their 3D surround sound on. On the CMF2 Plus, the treble does get a little bit harsh. The Sport X20 and CMF Pro 2 actually are pretty decent, but I think the OnePlus buds have the best 3D surround kind of spatial audio effect. Really opens up the soundstage with the least amount of reverb and kind of strange effects. I still prefer using the buds without it on, but it's fun to play around with on the OnePlus buds. But now onto the sound quality itself. I need to mention first how incredibly difficult it is to score sound quality. Again, this is my personal preference. I personally like a slightly bass boosted sound. I want my upper mids to be boosted to a nice level so distorted guitar stand out in instrumentation. And I like a nice crisp treble response. And I don't mind my upper treble being boosted to get some nice sparkle. So things like hi-hats, crashes, and ride cymbals really stand out. Orchestration, I listen to a lot of like symphonic metal and quite complex music where I find that detailed upper treble and just treble in general really does work out. I also play drums, so I just want my drums to stand out very well. And I want a nice bass response here because I listen to a lot of electronic music as well, especially in the gym, a lot of hardstyle, like melodic techno and hard techno. So basically, I want everything to just sound very full and rich. And I do score all the buds with my favorite EQ customization, which I'll share with you on all the earbuds. And I only use the EQ in the earbuds respected app to keep it fair across all the buds. So starting with the Soundcore Sport X20, I'm scoring them an 8 out of 10. The stock tuning is quite over the top when it comes to bass, so this is my go-to EQ. And this will retain that powerful bass, which is great for training, but it lets the mids and trebles stand out more. You don't get amazing detail and separation here, but you get a pretty rich and clear sound. If you like powerful bass, you'll like these earbuds. Next is the Skullcandy 360 with an 8 out of 10 as well. This is my go-to EQ, and these buds do use sound by Bose. So this bud is basically the same sound you get from Bose's flagship buds, but just not as good. The mids are a real standout though, vocals are nice and clear. The bass is slightly boosted, but not over the top. You still get a bit of punch. The treble's a bit lacking though, and it can only be improved so much in the EQ. Next is the CMF Buds 2 Plus with an 8.5. This is my go-to EQ, and the sound here is actually quite similar to the Skullcandy 360, but the treble has a nicer presence, it's more crisp, and you get better detail on those high frequencies. I'm also scoring the CMF Buds Pro 2 and 8.5. They're quite over the top with bass, so I just dial that down in the EQ a bit, and I find the sound is very similar to the CMF Buds 2 Plus, but I find the Pro 2 do have slightly nicer upper treble, so hi-hats, crashes, and orchestration sounds a bit nicer to my ears. Then there's the Nothing EA, also with an 8.5, which doesn't have treble on the same level as the CMF buds. Even boosting it in the EQ, you can only push out so much, but the mids and upper mids on the ear are a real standout. You get clear natural vocals, really solid instrument separation, and there's still some nice detail with the treble. It's just a bit smoother and laid back. But if you want to push out some crazy bass on the EA or either of the CMF buds, you can do so with the Ultra Bass Boost or Bass Boost sliders in the apps. Next is the Soundcore Liberty 4NC, also with an 8.5. This is my go-to EQ. They do need a little bit of EQing, but out of all the buds that I have scored an 8.5, I personally like the 4NC the best. I find they have the nicest treble. It's crisp, there's a really decent amount of upper treble sparkle, and it doesn't get harsh at the same time. The bass also hits nice and deep. The mids are slightly recessed, that's my only complaint, and you can only boost them so much, but they still stand out well enough, at least for me. Overall, it's a solid, rich tuning. Next, I have the Galaxy Buds FE scored a 9 out of 10. The actual overall sound is very similar to the Liberty 4NC, so you get that same really nice crisp treble, but I find the upper mids are just boosted a little bit better on the Buds FE here. So this will really favor rock, metal, and instrument separation is slightly better. Next is the Soundpeats Air 5 Pro, also with a 9. The stock tuning is pretty bland, but after a decent amount of EQing, you can get them sounding really good and just get a really well-rounded tuning. Rich bass with some punch, crisp treble that doesn't get harsh, very solid mids, really no complaints with the sound here. I'm also scoring the earfun Air Pro 4 a 9. They also need a decent amount of EQing, and with that, the sound is actually very similar to the Soundpeats Air 5 Pro. You can get the treble sounding a bit crisper on the Air 5, but earfun gets pretty close. It's also just a very clear, rich, well-balanced sound. I've also got the OnePlus Buds 3 with a 9 out of 10. They also need a decent amount of EQing. I actually combined this EQ with the hearing test. And they don't have the clearest vocals, but the treble is a real standout. It's crisp, the upper mids are boosted nicely as well, and the bass is rich, but not over the top. So the Buds 3 lean towards being slightly brighter than the other Buds that have a score of 9. If I had to choose one of the Buds out of all the 9 Buds, I would go for the Soundpeats Air 5 Pro personally. But my number one preference overall for sound is the OnePlus Buds 4 with a score of 9.5. I'm pretty happy with the stock tuning, so I just need a subtle EQ and don't use a hearing test like I do on the Buds 3. But this is just my perfect tuning, the nicest treble out of all the earbuds. It's a perfect combination of treble detail and upper treble, so there's a nice amount of precision and sparkle and airiness at the same time. It's also not pushed to the point of getting too harsh, which can be the case on the Buds 3. The mids here are smooth but clear, it's a natural experience, not overly boosted, but vocals never fall behind in the mix. Same case with the upper mids, clear but not over the top. And I think the great treble also adds to the nice open soundstage the Buds 4 have. The bass also kicks in quite hard, even with my slight reduction. It's rich, it's powerful. It can be a little bit over the top at times, but you can just dial it down in the EQ if you need. I do prefer the bass on the Buds 4 over the Buds 3, especially when it comes to sub bass. Again, it's just a solid all-round tuning, and the stock tuning is great, which gives you a really nice starting point to tailor it to your liking. But that wraps up all 10 categories, and if you want to customize the scoring, be sure to check out my free spreadsheet linked below. On there, you can compare all the Buds. I've got notes for each score, there's a specifications tab and the core quality tab. And you can personalize a score, changing the weight for each category, and after that, you get a new custom ranking. But the final scores are in, and the OnePlus Buds 4 have easily taken the win with 89 out of 100. Even if you personalize the score, they'll likely come out on top. You can tell throughout the video, they're just a solid earbud. After I reviewed the Buds 4, I was pretty relieved to see a Bud kind of clearly take that first spot, because for so long, the top like 7 earbuds were all incredibly close. I never knew which Bud to recommend, but the Buds 4 are just an easy choice. They're the best value Bud right now, and they're actually the Bud I've been using the most, and I have basically every earbud that exists in any price range, and they just sound great. The noise cancelling is solid, they fit me really well. I've got no complaints with the Buds 4. But there are many other earbuds on this ranking that might be worth it over the Buds 4, taking into account price. So the earfun Air Pro 4 are up there. Really, there's no flaws. They're gonna be a great gaming earbud. That's why I use them as my dedicated Switch 2 earbud. You've also got the Soundcore Liberty 4NC that are up there. They're quite old, so you'll likely get them a lot cheaper. Their only downside is the core quality is not amazing. But another cheaper alternative is the CMF Buds Pro 2 that do have great core quality, and they often go on sale quite cheap, close to $30 US I've heard. And they do have the case dial for some better customization of your controls. And the Soundcore Sport X20 are also up there. Their unique pros is the hook, as well as the IP68 dust and waterproof rating. I'd say the Galaxy Buds FE are also worth it because they go on sale quite cheap. They're a no-brainer if you're in the Samsung ecosystem. You get great sound, great fit, and great noise cancelling, which are going to be the 3 main things most people want. I'd say the only Bud that isn't worth going for is the Skullcandy 360. I think they're priced a bit too high compared to the other earbuds where the quality is on par. But there's no denying the OnePlus Buds 4 take the easy win today. So for more information on those buds, check out my full review here. You can check out all my full reviews of all the earbuds down in the description. I've got my affiliate links down below as well, which does help support the channel. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Stay picky, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.